A few years ago, I went to go visit my family in my hometown. So, excuse me. So, one particular day stood out to me. We had like a family dinner, and so all my siblings and everybody was there, and other relatives, cousins, and things like that, whatever, right? And I think I talked about this before, but just maybe I didn't tell the whole story. But here we go. So the conversation came up about spanking children. And this is a very controversial topic because you're challenging someone's parenthood. You're challenging someone on how they're parenting their children. Or at least that's how they take it. Even if you're not challenging them, you're just saying, hey, this is not what I do. Sometimes people take it as a challenge, like you're trying to say they're a bad parent because they're doing it. I don't feel that way. I grew up getting my ass whooped. You know what I'm saying? So it's not that I feel that way that you are a bad parent because you whoop your children. Now abusing your children, like actually um like abuse as far as like using things like irons and stuff like that. We all, remember good times and stuff like that. Like, yeah, like that I would consider like abuse. But to be honest, I low key kind of think like whooping is abuse as well. But here's the thing: the reason why I don't look at it as full out abuse is because of intent. Usually, when parents do it, it's not malicious thought behind it. Parents are thinking that this is a form of discipline. They're guiding their children, especially according to how we were taught, especially in our community. I can't speak when I speak on things like this, and I'm saying melanated community. I'm speaking from experience, so it's not that I'm excluding other communities. I didn't grow up in a household, so I don't know how they grew up or their backstories and all of that. So it's not exclusive. It's just I'm speaking from what I know. So anyway, I don't look at it as like flat out abuse because of the the intent behind it. A lot of times it's not malicious. It's not like you trying to hurt the child just because you want to hurt them. It's a form of you thinking that you're disciplining them because of what you were taught. So boom, back to the story. So we're having a dinner, or whatever, and somehow the conversation come up about whooping children, spanking children, and unfortunately, I was the only person in the house that was saying that no, you shouldn't whoop children. There's other ways to discipline them, and it was a big debate. Like when I say it was a huge debate, like it had to be about maybe about seven other adults in the house, maybe seven or eight. Um, yeah, maybe like seven or eight other adults in the house, and every single one of them was against what I was saying. Everybody was arguing a point that yeah, you should whoop a child, and if they out of line, you gotta whoop that ass, all this other stuff. Like, and this is coming from a person again who used to get their ass whooped. And when I first had children, like my children was a little bit younger. I did, I'm not gonna lie, like I did paddle their butt, pop their hands and stuff like that. But I never felt good about doing it. I never felt like it was right. And when I really self evaluated myself, I realized that it was something that was taught to me. And I was being a lazy parent by not thinking outside the box or guiding them in a more positive way. It started to feel like I was bullying them. But I'll get back to that in a moment. So we going backward and forth about, the reasons behind why you should and the reasons why you should. It was a big thing, and people was getting heated because, of course, whenever I have a way of talking, and it's not always the most tactful, especially if it's something I'm passionate about. And so the adults that was in the house just like, kind of getting upset because they felt like again I was challenging their parenthood and their parent skills, especially those who have raised children. Their children are grown. It's like, who you talking to? Like, I raised my children, and yeah, they all right. I whoop their ass, and they okay. Um, and it was one of the people that was really kind of surprising to me was my auntie. When we was growing up, she was not really with the whooping. She felt bad until she had her own children, of course, but she used to feel bad. I remember when my mama used to want to whoop me, and I would run to my auntie, like, let my auntie do it, let my auntie do it. And she would literally, like, go in the bathroom, like, hit the toilet and stuff like that. because she didn't want to whip me. So to hear her like arguing this point was like, oh wow, I thought she would have been on my side with it. But again, she grew up in the same type of environment too, so a lot of times we don't like to go against the things that we were taught because we feel like we spit in our parents' face, like we're basically challenging their parenthood. So a lot of times we don't like to go against those things or speak up when things don't feel right to us. It didn't feel right to her before, but I guess when she finally had her own children, it started to feel right. But I know that from my own parenting, that a lot of that really just come out of frustration, um, tradition, things that we learned, and laziness. If I'm gonna be frank, is you not wanting to take the time to talk to your child, to understand your child where they coming from, to impart wisdom on them because they at that age, at a young age, like they don't have it like that. So you got to teach them from the experience, the things that you learned, your wisdom, the knowledge that you applied, and things you learned through your life. But again, a lot of times we don't do that because it's because of what we're taught. It is what we grew up, what we learned from, our own parents, and we just really wasn't taught another way. Like, I'm gonna be real, like I wasn't necessarily taught another way to parent because that is really like what it was. My discipline was getting my ass whooped. So, yeah. So we had this conversation, and I remember like toward the end of the conversation. Well, I want to say it was probably over with, and it was a little girl there. She wasn't related to me, but she was there, and she was actually playing with my children, but she kept doing so. She was like a little energetic, a little ball of energy, but she kept doing something that my aunt kept telling her to stop, and she kept doing whatever she was doing. And it was something that was like just very childlike. It wasn't something over the top, but the point of the fact that my auntie had to say it more than once. My auntie, grabbed her and popped her on her butt twice. Now, and she looked at me like after she did it, like as to say, like, see, like, yeah, it worked. You see, she stopped, didn't you? You know what I'm saying? Did she really stop? No, not really. She kept, like, she waited a little while and she went right back to doing whatever she was doing. But nevertheless, again, this is what we're taught, so we think it's right. Now, I'm gonna get a little bit into when I first like start like really making these feelings or making this discovery on my own. Like, okay, you know what is realization on my own? Like, like this don't feel right, and I got to be real. So me and my children's father, we would have like, arguments about this. My son was a lot younger. He was like 2, and he would discipline him. But to me, and I don't know, it could have been the mother in me. It could have just, it could have been a reflection from my own self, my own inner thoughts. Like, no, like, why are you, reacting this way? I don't know. But I felt like he was a little bit harder on our son, our oldest son, than our other 2. Well, our youngest son was like a baby pretty much. So, of course, he couldn't, whoop him. But we was having like these arguments about this. And at one point, I had made the argument that it was some bitch ass shit. And, it wasn't that I was trying to be disrespectful, because I really wasn't. It was like I kept trying to express to him what I felt about it, like explaining like our children are goddesses and gods, and we shouldn't, treat them that way. You know what I'm saying? Like, we should talk to them like they got sense. We should find other ways of disciplining them. It may not be easy, and it could be a little frustrating, especially because we don't have the tools to, I'm not going to say we don't have the tools. We haven't utilized the tools within us to discipline them in other ways. But it just like, no, like, what is this really teaching them? Because at the end of the day, a lot of people that I know that got whoopings and stuff when they was growing up, not all of them, but a lot have a certain fear of authority. You know what I mean? Don't really, they end up being people pleasers. Or they go all the way the other way, like all the way rebellious, like we're completely like fuck authority figures, but I want my children to be able to use their mind. I don't want them to resort to violence as a way to resolve issues. I want them to be able to express themselves. I want them to be emotionally intelligent and not dismiss their feelings or others. I want them to just be healthy mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, And so trying to explain this to him this way, he had the same argument that anybody would have. Well, I got my ass whooped, I'm okay. You got your ass whooped, you okay. Da da this, that, and the third, yada yada yada. And I kept trying to explain to him like, yeah, but whoopings didn't really work for me. Like I got my ass whooped, but it only thing it did was just make me not want to get caught. It didn't make me not want to do the thing that I was doing. I think that my parents would have been better off talking to me, trying to figure out what it is that I want to do, why I want to do it, imparting wisdom on me, because it wasn't like children not stupid. You know what I'm saying? Like you could talk to them and explain things to them. And the fact is, if they want to do it, regardless of what you say, they're going to do it. So a better route would be to talk to them and help them figure out a better way to have whatever experience that they're trying to have, or impart wisdom on them so that they understand why it's not the best idea to have that experience. But to try to whoop it or try to beat it out of them, it's some bitch ass shit. For one, because you are a lot bigger than this child, and this child cannot defend themselves against you. And as a parent, I know you say, well, a child shouldn't defend themselves against me. I'm their parent, da da da. But what I'm saying is, a lot of times as parents, we lose our cool, we get frustrated, our children do annoying things, you get frustrated. And my children's father was saying something to the such like, well, he gotta listen to this and the third and yada yada yada. And I'm like, yeah, but so again, you're doing that out of frustration. And my thing is, you get frustrated with adults all the time, but you find a way to contain your anger. You find a way to address the behavior of whatever they're doing besides beating the hell out of them. So why can't you have that same grace with your children? That's what made me say some bitch ass shit, because somebody that can't defend themselves, who can't beat you, who can't fight you back, you have no problem with basically violently attacking them because they're not listening. But it's adults that don't listen to you every day or disregard your feelings or your thoughts every day, and you have grace for them. You have, you have regard for their feelings or their thoughts, and you don't want them to react a certain way, so you clean up what you're saying and you figure out how to communicate with them. Why can't you have that same energy with your children? Yeah, needless to say, he didn't like it. He's like, oh, you calling me a bitch, da da da. Like, it wasn't even that I was calling him a bitch. I was basically speaking upon, like, general, like, the whole act of it. You know what I'm saying? When you can't control yourself when it comes down to your children. When you can't see them as a human being, like you see somebody you go to work with, they may piss you off at the job and you ignore it because you don't want to lose your job. Like, you got incentive there, but you don't have incentive. Like, your child is someone who is learning this world, that is figuring things out as they go. They don't know everything, but they think they do, because you was once there. You was one of them children. You know what I'm saying? You thought you knew, like, what they don't know what they talking about. Like I know for example, my children, they probably think that my life started when I had them. That I wasn't even a child. I didn't even grow up. So like they probably think that my life started with them. So children could be very self-centered in that way. But nevertheless, it was a big thing. And so when I went to visit my family, the only person that really kind of surprised me was my aunt, again, because this is somebody who really, as I remember it, was against it when I was growing up. So for her to be so adamant about it now, it was like, wow. But I also recognized something too. And again, not to be offensive, but she is more heavily into the church now. Excuse me. And, I'm not trying to completely blame it on it, because it's a combination of things, but that do play a part. I remember, again, having this conversation with them, and I was explaining to them that a lot of this came from slavery. And this is not from something that I looked up or anything, even though I do got some notes I want to share with you guys toward the end. But this wasn't something that I looked up. It was just something I felt. And I was explaining to them, this is something that happened to us during slavery. And at that time, I get it. It was necessary at that time. A lot of parents whoop their children to keep the slave owners from beating their children, because you care about your child. You're gonna whoop your child. You're gonna make sure that they're okay. You're not gonna beat them to death. But if they let the slave owners do it, they would probably kill their children or beat them half dead. So a lot of times parents would discipline their own children, like, nah, I got it, because they didn't want the slave owners to do it and basically kill their children or beat them to death or halfway to death, So I get it. It was like a way of keeping their children in line so that, the slave owners didn't do anything to them or kill their children. And I guess to a certain degree, a person can still kind of make the argument now. Like, if you don't discipline your children, they go out in this world, the police gonna do this or this, that, and the third. I get the thought process, but it's a different time, and so we should be able to communicate that to our children, explain these things to our children. Again, even that, explaining like, hey, this is why we discipline our children. Like, this is something that we learned. I had this conversation with my children. You know, this is something that we learned, to do to keep our children safe, so to speak. But in this day and age, it's like you can go about this another way. At that time, it was necessary. At this point, you're making it necessary because in your mind, you thinking, if I don't do this, if my child go out here and they misbehaving, something can happen to them. Again, this was taught to us. And then it was reinforced with Christianity because you have things like Proverbs 13:24. Whoever so spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves them is careful to discipline them. So let's talk about this word spare. Now, I do my etymology, and I want you guys to hear this. So spare, etymology, when it first the word first came about, spare, is Old English, which is another word for sparion, and it means refrain from injuring or destroying. Not plentiful, meager, refrain from using. The part that caught my attention the most was refrain from injuring or destroying. So spare the rod, refraining from injuring or destroying. And then the rod, which is a stick or a pole. So, and that's also Old English for club. And then I want to get into a spoil, which means plunder, skin stripped from an animal, to strip, plunder, or seize goods, especially booty taken in war or conquest. So you are basically, and don't get it twisted, because we know some of our parents use some of anything. I know I done got with extension cords, telephone cords, big leather belts, knives, spoons, house shoes. Like, I'm not even trying to be funny, like real talk. Like yeah. So, like, again, our parents did these things because it was a taught thing. Like, they, it was taught, and then it was solidified with religion and westernized thinking. Now, again, these are things that I was already saying. Me looking this up recently was for this video, but I hadn't looked this up before then because it was just something that I just naturally felt. So I didn't need to look it up, but I wanted to bring some facts to you guys. Not just from my experience, but just things that I looked up. Like I say again, when these words first started, this is what it meant. And people say that it's a form of discipline. And I would say that discipline comes in many different forms. And when I looked up the etymology of discipline, it was first brought about, or first recorded as the Latin word disciplina, or duplicius, and it meant instruction, learning, or training. And it evolved to encompass the broader concept of self-control under order and structured knowledge, right? And it changed that meaning around the 14th to 15th century, like around the transatlantic slave trade. That's when they basically changed the meaning. Again, going in line with what I was saying, that when these slave owners took us, that was a part of their training. That's how they disciplined and taught us to obey them. And so we thus do the same thing to our children. Okay? Now, I looked up a couple other things because I wanted to just bring this, all together. Because I know sometimes I speak on things as far as Christianity, and it sounds like I'm just straight up condemning Christianity on every front. And it's not that. It's just that a lot of things, or a lot of issues that we have within our community can be traced back to Christianity, because we justify a lot of things that we do with their religion. And I'm talking about in the melanated communities, like, because I mean I know it's other communities that spank their children and things like that as well. But I can almost guarantee you, and I didn't research this, but I can say about 95% sure say that a lot of them had similar values that we had before colonization, and they adopted these attributes or these ways of disciplining their children from the colonizers. You know what I mean? Um, but again, this is not an attack on anyone. This is just affirmation because I want us to look at these things a little bit differently and what we're really teaching our children. And are we really disciplining them, or are we just passing on a tradition that we are afraid to let go of because we don't know what else to do? And it's okay as a parent. I say this all the time. Like, it's no handbook. Raising children is not easy, and it's not for the weak. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't get it twisted. However, it's okay to say that you don't know or you need help. It's okay to say, you know what? I didn't know any better. This is what I was taught, and I want to do something different. It's okay to say that. It's okay to look into other ways of disciplining your children, to try other ways of disciplining your children. It's all right. You know, and it could be a battle, especially when you got those around you who were raised the same way, and when they see you raising your children in a way that's different from them, for some reason it strike a chord, and again, people start to feel like you attacking their parenthood for whatever reason. And it could be hard when you're trying to, justify your means of disciplining your children if it differs from those around you. You know, they'll say things, and I know in our community, and I know y'all know what I'm talking about, if you're like basically talking to your children and allowing your children to express themselves and ask you questions and things like that, because we were taught a child is to be seen and not heard and all this type of stuff. Like, children would no, children don't know everything, but if you really pay attention to children, like, they really can open up your mind to look at the world in a different way. Before you were, beat into submission. You know what I mean? The curiosity that they have. Sometimes, it can be annoying. Them wanting to do things that they don't know. They curious. They want to try things. And, you want the best for them. You don't want them to hurt themselves. And I get it. But like I said, again, it's other ways to teach that. It's other ways to go about that than to beat them into submission. You want your children to fear you like you fear God. Like that, and that's why I say, like, all this really ties into, like, it's not me trying to be disrespectful, but it all ties in together. It's that saying, like, I fear God, they should fear me, or they don't fear me, they're not gonna listen. Fear and respect are two different things. And your children fearing you, honestly, is not a flex, because they carry that a lot of times into life, into other relationships. They carry that into their work relationships when the supervisor or whoever is telling them to do certain things and they know it's not right, or they should speak up and they won't because they don't want to get fired. They're afraid of the discipline that will follow if they speak up. It carries on. It carries on into their relationships. When when they're used to being beat when they do the wrong thing, and then a girl get with the boy and the boy is being abusive because this is what he was taught as well in his household. If I want her to act right, I gotta beat her ass and all this. And then she like, oh well, I messed up, and he's only doing what he think is right. He loves me because that's what you told her. I love you. It's gonna hurt you more than it hurt me. Okay, well, he's beating me because he loved me. So it's like it carries on into other areas of our lives whether we realize it or not. But I looked up a couple of things involving this, and I got this from BBC.com, but it says corporal punishment is deeply embedded in Christianity and Western culture, and in African American culture, it is related to slavery and Jim Crow segregation. Now, again, this is something that I already knew. It was something that I just felt before I even read. Like I said, this was something that I just looked up recently for this video, but I already felt this was a part of my argument when I was trying to explain this to others. But because I didn't have, I guess, something like this to show them, they didn't really want to hear it. But I felt like what I was saying was clear. Like that's what I felt. I felt like, I was explaining it clearly. I felt like what I was saying made sense. It made sense to me. You know, this is where it came from. This is why we still do it. And of course, like I said again, my own experiences. I know that a part of it was, I get frustrated. You're not listening. I got to repeat myself. That right there, as a parent, you feel like, no, you my child. You're supposed to do what I said, what I say, do it, whatever. Your children are yours, but they're not your property. And this is how we were treated in slavery, as property. And this is like, in a sense, this is how you treat your children. You can't have thoughts. You to be seen and not heard. You don't talk back. You don't say. And we consider everything talking back. I'm not gonna say who, but I've seen a grown man, like, their mother would say certain things, and I'd be like, you can disagree, and I'm not gonna disrespect my mama. I'm like, disagreeing is not disrespect, but that is what we were taught. Disagreeing is disrespect. And I remember one well, it was more than one time, but I remember the first time, like, I think he wanted to show me that it was like, okay, now I'm serious. Like, if I say certain things, she gonna say I'm disrespecting her. So he was saying something and disagreeing with something she was saying. And she was like, watch your tone. Don't talk to me like that. And I'm looking like, what tone? Like, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't cuss. He didn't, like, nothing. He just disagreed. And just a mere point of fact that he disagreed, she took that as disrespect. And this is a grown man. And we think that is, a lot of people, we think that is respect. If your parents say something, you don't disagree. That's being disrespectful. No, you can disagree respectfully. You don't have to argue with them and go back and forth, but you can say, nah, that's not what I feel. That's not what I think. And express what you think you feel. But you still got that child mentality of when they used to beat your ass. So you like, nah, I ain't going to say that because they probably going to fuck me up. And we think that's a badge of honor. That's not cute. You being an adult and you can't express yourself to another adult, be it your parent or not. You still should be able to express yourself. That's just my thoughts on it. But, let me see. So, before the transatlantic slave trade, the focus was on teaching, guiding, and educating children about their communities, values, and norms, rather than punishment. Raising children was a collective responsibility, with the proverb, it takes a village to raise a child, reflecting the emphasis on communal care. Many African societies viewed children as sacred beings, connected to ancestors, and the divine disciplinary practices were designed to foster a child's spiritual and social development within a community. Now, this goes back to what I was saying earlier in the video. We wasn't taught this. We wasn't taught, other ways of disciplining. We wasn't taught to really sit down and talk to our children. Again, when I don't know. I think I probably skipped past because I was probably talking too fast. But it's one of the things that we would say when a black person lets their children speak up or express themselves. All you raising your children like Caucasians and this, that, and the third. And I feel like it's a difference because I've seen some Caucasians that will let their children go way overboard. They now it will be a form like their children be disrespectful sometimes. Calling them out their name, yelling at them, slamming doors. Like, no, I fuss at my children even now. Like, even though I don't whoop them, I don't violently attack them, but I fuss at them. I get angry sometimes at them, for, like, if I got to keep repeating things, I may yell sometimes. But I also, yes, I let my children express themselves. We have conversations about things that they're doing or things that I expect of them. And I let them express how they feel. I don't just say, well, no, because I said so. I want them to understand why I said so. I want them to know why I'm saying what I'm saying, not just do it because I said it. Because at the end of the day, if they don't have the mental fortitude to overstand, because I'm not allowing that to grow or develop, because every time they want to speak up, I'm beating them down, they're going to carry that into adulthood. And when I'm not around, what are their reactions going to be? How are they going to deal with life? If they don't have me there to basically, step in and tell them how to think, what to do, and what I'm saying? So I'm teaching them to be thinkers now. So yeah, I may let them, I allow them to speak their mind, and and respectfully, No, they're not going to be cussing and yelling at me and all this stuff. But I do allow them to express themselves, to speak their mind. Ways of disciplining back in those days were the oral tradition. It was oral traditions and storytelling, immersion in nature and play. These were like ways that they got it. These are just some examples. I say this as well. I'm all for natural law. Man's law is that beating you to submission and control and things like that. I like for my children to learn from natural consequences, and not everything. Like I say, some things, yes, it's like no. But again, I explain to them. Whereas, some things when I was growing up, it was like no, and that was that. Then I gotta be left to figure out, well, why I can't do that. Instead of somebody just sitting down and talk to me and say, okay, well, you can't do this because of this, or you should do this because of this, or don't do this because of that. So, I was a different breed because I still I would still be one of them children that do what I wanted to do. That's why I say the whoopers didn't even work for me, because I still would do what I wanted to do. Period. But I did this video because I want us to examine ourselves and examine how we as parents pass on traditions that are not our own. I know a lot of us like to disassociate ourselves from African culture and we're not African, we're Americans. Okay, that's true. We were born here. A lot of us, are born here. And I get that thought process. I also understand that some things that came from our African culture, we don't adopt because we live over here and we have adopted American culture, westernized culture as our own. And so we don't look at those things. We look at those things as somehow taboo. Like, no, you got to whoop your children. You have to beat them. You have to make them overstand by, physical discipline. That they're not going to get it no other way. Which we know that's not true. Because there's some children who you don't have to really do nothing but raise your voice a little bit. And they'll get in line because they don't want to be in trouble. They don't like being in trouble. They don't like being yelled at and things like that. So I just wanted to highlight to my people in particular that there is another way. There are other ways that we can discipline our children. Like I just said, emerging in nature and play, teaching through our own experiences, telling the truth about things that we experienced and things like that. Letting natural causes, like talk to them, telling them, and letting nature show them when they're not listening. It's a lot of different ways that we discipline, but physically attacking them, physically beating them, it's not the way. And we really have to break that curse. That is a curse within our lineage. And we really must break it for the sake of our children.
You are chosen. 144,000 chosen children.
Assured. We are mere alchemists, transmuting your thoughts into gold.
A risk of Yale.
Yes, ask me.
Meet me